Well, we want to talk now about what are the issues that lead couples, lead families to dissolve, have conflict, have problems. And what are what I call roots of bitterness. And this research is coming out of Gottman, John Gottman, who's probably done more research on the actual relationship than anybody else. And he has spawned, there's some other people who've done, Markham and others have followed him and been trained by him. But he's done a lot of research by hooking people up to brainwave heart machines and so forth, and looking to see what happens when a couple has a discussion. And you know, it's like an x-ray. You can tell what's really going on. It's not self-report. How did you feel when your wife called you an idiot? And you say, oh, I had perfect peace. You know, you can see your heart rate goes up and so forth. So this book, Why Marriages Succeed or Fail, is the basic one, and then the more recent one is the 7 principles for making marriage work. Now what you'll find is there are a lot of theories about what causes divorce, and you'll find a lot of people pushing a various theory about how to have a good marriage. Have any of you heard of eHarmony.com? If you haven't, you've been living in a cave. They do $50 million a year at least in advertising to take eHarmony. And if you find out, you take a personality test, and they say if you just find the person with the right personality, then you'll have harmony. I do a testing, Myers-Briggs, and at Lifeway Counseling we do testing, and I found those to be quite helpful. And one of the reasons they're helpful are the gifts checklist. They're helpful, but they're not the base answer. They are helpful. What I find is that when you understand gifts differing, Myers-Briggs, temperament, then instead of seeing these differences as being something that she's doing just to really aggravate me, you say, well, no, people are built differently. So when at College Hill, we gave every person in the church, every new member, the Myers-Briggs and the gifts checklist, and we taught people are different, learn to get along with differences, and it's a good thing being different. So that removes one of the issues about what causes problems, but it's the major issue that causes people conflict and therefore leads to divorce or real serious problems in marriage is the way they deal with differences. And if they don't deal with differences well, then you got a problem. Now, we're going to talk about some of that. And I went to a conference, a White House conference on family life several years ago. Reagan was in the White House. I had a beard then, around like this, and they thought I was Solzhenitsyn. So this guy said, oh, Mr. Solzhenitsyn, so good to have you here. I said, ja, that's German or something. You know, I couldn't pull it off. And what they found was that one of the things that they were promoting was the notion, let's emphasize the positive dimensions of marriage, not just the negatives. And so I've got, these are the 7 dimensions that they found to be highly correlated with positive marriage and family life. Now, I'm not going to go into these in detail, but I think you can see that if you had all 7 of these in your marriage and family life, you're much more likely to have a good relationship. First is recognizing the family as a group, and I do teaching on that, and I'll have some other training later on genograms and from generation to generation. Secondly, a respect for each family member. Respect is absolutely basic, and my book on out in the hall there at the bookstore, we talk about that in Listening for Heaven's Sake, and you'll find that in Humpty Dumpty. Absolutely essential. Number 3, communication skills, being able to communicate, relate to each other despite differences. 4th, conflict management. Now, you look at 2, 3, and 4, they're all critically important to dealing with differences. So learning how to do that and having classes, having training in your church that teach everybody how to do that will go a long way toward propelling your congregation or your group toward health. It's not enough, maybe, but it is necessary but not sufficient, as the philosophers would say. So then spending time together. Well, Most families don't want to spend time together if you don't have respect and communication skills and problem solving, conflict management. So they don't. Affirmation. A lot of research shows that modern families don't affirm each other very much. A lot of the communication is negative. It's criticizing. And so learning how to affirm, and next week I'll tell you more about that. We've got that boiled down to some very important concepts. The seventh one is religious practices. And the research that I put up on my website for this on the importance of marriage and religion in America to healthy families will blow your mind when you read that research. It's really, really powerful. Well, let's go to the first one here. Family trait number one. Recognizing that what we do now affects many generations for the future. And I do a lot of teaching on this. I have whole courses and materials I've developed, but we're not going to cover that in this brief time we have. And recognizing that what happened in the past affects us now. And a lot of times, the stuff that we're working on now really came from 2 or 3 generations ago. Secondly, single parenting has great risks for poverty, academic problems, drugs, etc. I've already mentioned that. Third, honoring your father and mother is essential to healthy marriage now. And that means dealing with roots of bitterness. A lot of people are having enormous conflict here because they're out of whack with the past. Now, happy trait number 4, which is what I'm going to emphasize now and a lot next week, because it's the most pressing thing, that if you want to work on something, it's teaching people how to deal with differences and dealing with it in a way where you manage the conflict. Conflict is normal. Misery is optional. Conflict is normal. And what I find is a lot of people believe that conflict is abnormal. And therefore, when there is conflict, they don't know how to deal with it in a healthy way, and they move into misery. And misery is what we see all around us, because people don't deal with conflict very, very well. Anger is normal. Attacks are optional. Anger is absolutely consistent in all cultures all over the world. Can't deal with conflict, it leads to divorce, or maybe sometimes a silent divorce, and it leads to generational pain. I've never talked with any man who's involved in pornography that didn't have a problem with his wife, have an anger problem. So if you don't deal with the root, you're not going to deal with the fruit. Out of the roots come the fruits. And we see all kinds of people with roots out here, or fruits out here of alcohol, drugs, pornography, adultery, etc. That's not the root in most of the cases. But if we try to deal with that without dealing with where it comes from, we're not going to be very successful. I haven't completely convinced some people of that, but that's my statement. I'm going to stick with it. Now, what Gottman has found is this. There are 3 successful styles of dealing with differences and conflict, and 1 unsuccessful style. Now, I was not taught this in graduate school. I was taught there's only 1 successful style. And this is kind of in the popular, press, if you will. There's only 1 successful style of dealing with conflict. Well, Gottman found out that there's 3, and there's 1 that's very unsuccessful. The first successful style are some people avoid all open conflict. So when husband and wife have difficulty, they never voice it, they don't attack each other, they may get a little frustrated, but she'll go to her room and he'll go to his. He'll go to the basement and work like mad on whatever he works on. He'll do it. But then, after a time apart, they'll come back together and they don't resent it and have a root of bitterness. That's the key. They don't come up, it's not passive aggressive. It's not, a passive aggressive person is a person who never gets angry, but they always get even. And it's that getting even which causes the problem. So if you think, well, that's the kind of relationship we have, we don't fight openly, but you're getting even, that's not what you're having. You're not avoiding, you're just going to your different corners before you come out in the next round and smack somebody. Have you ever heard of the 20-minute rule? 20-minute rule is this. If you're in a group, you're in any family, and someone in the family brings something up, and another person sort of disagrees with it or puts it down, within 20 minutes, somebody in the group will put you down. It may not be the person that you put down, but somebody else will. I taught this when I was on staff at College Hill, because you'd find it in staff meetings. If you brought something up, you know, and said, well, I think we ought to have X, Y, Z in the church. And somebody said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. Within 20 minutes, somebody would come back and smack me. The 20-minute rule. We don't know how to deal with conflict very well. The resentment comes back up. The other day, I said something to my wife, and about 30 seconds later, she came back and she said, that was a quick 20-minute rule. But once you understand some things, you can sort of laugh with each other. And sense of humor and having fun with it is really, really important. And if you're serious all the time, that's a danger signal. The second part, after avoidance, is argue and complain. It's called the volatile couple, but they never attack each other. Now, I've got friends like this, and they will, they'll maybe drive up to see us from where they live down south, and they get there, and you say, well, hi, how are you doing? Oh, okay. Well, how was your trip? So, well, it took us about 4 hours. No, it took us 4 hours and 15 minutes. No, it wasn't 4 hours. It was 3 hours and 55 minutes. No, I was looking at the clock. No, I was listening to the news. You know, they go and they say, stop the madness. But they just love to argue. They love to be volatile. They fight, but they don't get down and dirty. They don't attack each other. There are a lot of complaints. Remember a while ago I said about VCR? They love to complain, but they're not really asking for a solution. They love to be volatile. It keeps them really hopped up and feeling good, sexy. Let's do it some more. They don't attack. They attend to each other. And a little later I'll tell you about the 5-to-1 ratio, which is critical in this. Third is agree to share all things deeply. This is what I was taught in graduate school. Look lovingly into each other's eyes and active listen and to share your heart. And I was reading a story one time by, what's the woman's name, the humorist who wrote, If Life's a Bowl of Cherries, Why Am I Always in the Pits? And she wrote this little story and said they were on their way home from a party, and her husband said, honey, have we ever had a deep and meaningful conversation? And she said, I hope not. Well, they may have been a volatile couple, you know. They didn't share everything. Now, I've got some friends that they live life, and then they talk about the life they've lived. The talking about it is as long as the life they live. They share deeply about everything. I was involved in their wedding. They shared everything deeply and how they felt about it, and they related. And well, that's okay. That's okay. But some of us don't have the constitution for it. We just can't quite go there. We like to have more energy, maybe a little bit of fight here and there without attacking.